The immortal jellyfish. Turritopsis dohrnii does something no other known animal does. When it's injured, starving, or old, it doesn't die. It reverts. The bell collapses back into a blob, sinks to the seafloor, and regrows into a juvenile polyp. Then it grows up again. And again. Scientists call it transdifferentiation. Mature cells switching identity mid-cycle and rebuilding the organism from scratch. Something that basically doesn't happen anywhere else in nature at this scale. It's not invincible. Predators and disease still kill it. But aging itself isn't a threat, because the life cycle just loops instead of ending. It's smaller than your fingernail, transparent, easy to miss entirely, and it's spreading through the world's oceans right now. Probably hitching rides in ship ballast water, colonizing coastlines nobody's tracking. A creature that solved death is quietly riding cargo ships into ports around the planet, and almost no one's paying attention. The Hydra. This freshwater polyp, barely a centimeter long, shows no measurable increase in death rate as it ages. None. Researchers have tracked Hydra populations for years without detecting the usual signs of biological decline. Its body is built from 3 separate populations of stem cells working in parallel, ectodermal and endodermal epithelial cells that make up the outer and inner body tube, plus interstitial cells that generate nerves, gland cells, and stinging cells, all 3 lineages dividing and replacing themselves for the animal's entire life. Cut a Hydra in half and you don't get 1 dead Hydra. You get 2, each growing into a complete, independent animal within days. The gene driving this renewal is called FOXO, the same gene linked to extreme old age in human centenarians. Yours just isn't running at full power. Left alone in a lab, with nothing hunting it and no disease to fight off, a Hydra doesn't appear to have an expiration date built into its biology at all. It just keeps rebuilding, tube-shaped and simple, no brain, no heart, refining a design evolution settled on roughly 700 million years ago and apparently never needed to improve. The tardigrade. Dry it out first, and it can survive almost anything. Boil it. Freeze it to nearly absolute zero. Launch it into the vacuum of space. In its active, hydrated state, a tardigrade is fragile. Boiling water or raw space radiation kills it just like most animals. But once its environment dries up, it enters a state called cryptobiosis, curling into a shriveled form called a tune, and expelling nearly all the water from its cells. What replaces that water isn't sugar, despite the popular claim. Tardigrades produce their own tardigrade-disordered proteins, known as cause proteins, which solidify into a protective glass-like gel inside each cell and lock its internal structures in place. Metabolism drops to a tiny fraction of a percent of normal. Time, for the tun, essentially stops. Specimens have been revived after more than a decade dried out on a museum microscope slide, rehydrated, and walking within hours. In 2007, the European Space Agency sent dehydrated tardigrades into low Earth orbit, exposed directly to the vacuum and radiation of space with no protection at all, and brought them back alive once rehydrated. Some had even reproduced afterward. There are over 1,000 known tardigrade species, found in moss, sediment, glaciers, and deep ocean trenches, and nearly all can pull off some version of this trick. In the tun state, they exit biological existence entirely, on purpose, then walk back in whenever conditions improve, sometimes decades later. The Planarian flatworm. Slice one into pieces, and each piece grows into a complete new worm, head, brain, and all, within about 2 weeks. This isn't just regeneration. Some Planarian lineages appear to be functionally immortal, showing no age-related decline, no matter how many times researchers cut them apart across generations. The secret isn't that every cell can do this. Fully differentiated muscle, gut, or eye cells stay exactly what they are. The trick belongs to neoblasts, a population of adult stem cells making up roughly 1/5 to 1/3 of the worm's body, the only cells capable of dividing and specializing into whatever tissue is missing, including a fully wired nervous system. Researchers have kept individual Planarian lineages alive through repeated cutting for years without any measurable decline in the resulting worms. The worm essentially never runs out of spare parts, not because every cell is interchangeable, but because it carries a built-in reserve of cells that are. The axolotl regrows, lose a leg, and a fresh one grows back within weeks, complete with bone, muscle, nerves, and blood vessels, fully functional, with no scar tissue at all. It can regenerate parts of its heart, spinal cord, jaw, and even portions of its own brain, something almost no other vertebrate on Earth can do. The mechanism involves cells at the wound site reverting to a stem cell-like state called a blastema, then rebuilding the missing structure piece by piece, in order, every time. This isn't a party trick. It means axolotls essentially don't accumulate the kind of permanent structural damage that eventually kills most animals through injury. In the wild, they're critically endangered, surviving in a single shrinking network of canals near Mexico City. The one animal that might hold real answers about regenerating human organs and spinal cords is disappearing before scientists have even figured out how it actually works. By the way, if you're enjoying learning about these creatures, I post content like this regularly. I'd appreciate if you subscribed. Thanks. The African lungfish. When its swamp dries up, most fish die within hours. The lungfish doesn't. It burrows into the mud, secretes a cocoon of hardened mucus around its entire body, and shuts down almost completely, breathing air through one narrow opening while everything around it turns to dust. This state, called estivation, can last for years at a time. Specimens have been revived in laboratories after more than 4 years buried in completely dried mud with no water access whatsoever. Its heart rate drops to a small fraction of normal, and its metabolism nearly flatlines, burning almost nothing just to stay technically alive. When the rains finally return, softening that exact patch of earth, it digs itself back out and swims away as if nothing happened. It doesn't travel or relocate. It surfaces in the same spot it went under, sometimes years earlier. The lungfish isn't really adapted to survive drought the way most desert animals are. It's adapted to disappear completely, motionless, in place, until the drought is over. The wood frog. In winter, this frog freezes solid, not mostly frozen, not sluggish, solid, the way meat freezes in a chest freezer. Its heart stops beating entirely. Its breathing stops. Ice crystals form throughout roughly 2/3 of its body, and by every conventional physiological measure, it is dead. Then spring arrives. Its body thaws from the inside out, and it hops away within hours like nothing happened. The trick is in the liver, which floods the frog's cells with concentrated glucose right before freezing begins, and works alongside urea, building up in the tissues, together acting as a natural antifreeze that keeps each cell intact, even as ice forms violently in the spaces between them. Up to 65% of the water in its body can freeze without killing a single cell. Wood frogs are found further north than almost any other amphibian on the planet, including well inside the Arctic Circle, because at some point, they evolved a way to stop being alive on purpose, then simply start again when the weather allows it. The betyloid rotifer. This microscopic creature hasn't had a single male in over 60 million years of its evolutionary history. No mating, no sexual reproduction at all. Just females endlessly cloning themselves generation after generation, which by every rule of evolutionary biology should have been a genetic dead end long ago. It wasn't. When its habitat dries out, the rotifer dehydrates completely, shattering its own DNA into hundreds of fragments, then repairs and reassembles the pieces into a working genome during rehydration, when its membranes briefly turn permeable and sometimes let in stray genetic material from surrounding bacteria and fungi. Specimens have been revived after decades frozen solid in Siberian permafrost and started reproducing again almost immediately. Scientists still aren't entirely sure how an animal that shatters its own genome every time it dries out avoids extinction by accumulated mutation over 60 million years. Somehow it just keeps going, one clone at a time, indefinitely, surviving conditions that would sterilize almost anything else alive on the planet. 8 animals, and none of them cheat death the same way. The jellyfish rewinds. The Hydra never stops rebuilding. The tardigrade exits its own biology entirely. The flatworm carries a hidden reserve of stem cells that can become anything it's missing. The axolotl regrows what should be permanently lost. The lungfish disappears in place until conditions improve. The wood frog stops and restarts. The rotifer shatters its genome and puts itself back together anyway. Different phyla, different environments, different tricks, but the same result every single time. Something that should be permanent, final, unavoidable, isn't. If this sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing so you don't miss future animal content. Thanks for watching.